2026, and silver and gold and the end of the monetary system as we know it. That's where we're going to start today. Is it the end of the monetary system as we know it? I hope not, because that would be putting a lot of pressure on chocolate cereal futures, and I don't like any pressure on chocolate cereal futures. And you know, I like the world we have, although there could be improvements, and maybe you got to make a mess to clean things up, right? So we'll see how things work out. The Alberta sovereignty, very bad Alberta sovereignty. Quebec sovereignty, very good, no problem there. Everybody's fine with elected members of parliament who are separatists in the definition of the party that they belong to. No problems there. Bloc Québécois, everybody's fine with it. But Alberta separatists, oof. And it's such a weird thing. And all of the premiers, all of the Western premier, every man and their dog are talking about how terrible Western separatists are. How dare those Western separatists dare to be, you know, not listening to Ottawa, not wanting to be part of our Canadian great country. And these people seem paid off. They don't seem in touch with the complaint that Alberta has, which is a valid complaint. The Ottawa doesn't seem to give a shit. And everybody else is pushing rhetoric instead of listening to what Alberta is saying, which is we're getting a shit deal and we're probably going to leave because you guys are being a-holes. So see ya, right? And they're right to do it, in my opinion. They have every right to do what they're doing. And so 1,000 to 1,200 jobs lost at GM Oshawa. And well, what did you think was going to happen? Mark Carney's done nothing to meaningfully move negotiations forward with Donald Trump. It seems like he wants to tank our economy, and so welcome to Mark Carney being successful at what he set out to do, unfortunately. Trump targets Bombardier and Canadian airplanes, and Canada doesn't allow sales of Gulfstream airplanes in Canada. And so Trump said, okay, we won't allow sales of your planes in the United States. No problems, tit for tat. And I think that's hilarious. So again, I think when Canadian policy is stupid and when Canada behaves stupidly, we deserve what we get. And there are people who are all so mad at Trump. Get mad at the people who caused this problem, which is our own government and our own stupid policies. It's not Trump. He's responding to our own stupid government. And so why do we let them continue being stupid the way they are? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. So a lot to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to talk about silver and gold, and what's going on with silver and gold indicates a problem with the structure of the monetary system that has been in place since post-World War II. And maybe that's the thing that's coming to an end. Who knows? Some people think this indicates big shifts and a huge shift. And I'm not a money guy, so I'm not prepared for this at all. Maybe I should have been prepared for this. Maybe I should. There are other people who are way more prepared. I've often said I don't have enough silver for this to be happening. My gosh. But there are other people who are seemingly much more well prepared. I'm just talking about what's happening, kind of as it happens. But I feel woefully unprepared for what's coming, despite the fact that I feel like I predicted this for a bit, right? Like things like this, big changes like this, are what Trump was saying he would do. Just didn't seem like he'd actually do it. And so here we are watching these big moves, and they're trying to suppress the price of silver, but they're failing. So the controls that used to exist no longer exist. And if that's true, then it'll be interesting to see how that all unwinds. So here's this guy, and Rothmus is sharing this. According to Dalio, I don't know who Dalio is, I'm sorry. Central banks and sovereign funds are shifting back to gold because it can't be printed. The fiat money system is on the brink. And again, there are indications, and I don't know, it seems like there are indications that that's plausible. Do I know that for sure? No, certainly not. But it seems like that silver price is crazy, that gold price is crazy, and the ups and downs are crazy, and what's happening? And it seems like people are talking about it. So here's this guy talking about the end of the monetary system. Here we go.
In your mind, is this the beginning of the end for the prescience of the US dollar?
It's the beginning of the end of the monetary system as we know it. It's not just the US dollar, it's the fiat monetary currencies. So the UK, the euro, Japan, China all have similar debt problems and so on, and are dealing with the same interrelationships, which is the reason you're seeing gold being chosen by the central banks. They want a currency. Gold has always been the main currency, and it's the only non-fiat currency. In other words, not the currency that can't be printed, that they want. And so that's why you're seeing central banks move and sovereign wealth funds move to gold. And that's the nature of the shift of the monetary system.
In your mind,
Very interesting. And the monetary system doesn't seem like Bitcoin is lost some value. It was up to 120 or something like that, and now it's down to 80 to 90, bouncing around there. And so it doesn't seem like people are flocking to Bitcoin as a hedge. And so that's interesting to note as well. No Limit says, this is the same guy that was talking about the Sigma 6 event. Now he's saying Sigma 7. And No Limit says, total system failure. Gold down 7%, silver down 17% in the last 24 hours. Over $10 trillion has been wiped out of the financial markets. That's about half of China's GDP, the second largest economy in the world, gone in one day, evaporated. Here's where things get really crazy. Remember 2 days ago when I told you about Sigma 6 events and how rare they are? Ladies and gentlemen, I present the first ever Sigma 7 in the history of financial markets. This is pure market manipulation by the top 1% aimed at wrecking the remaining 99%. But isn't this illegal? The rules don't apply to whoever's manipulating these markets because they make the rules. In my 23 years of macroeconomics, I've never seen anything of this magnitude or this level of manipulation. Gold rises about 3% per year on average. Now it's down almost 3 times that in one day. Silver, it's down 5 times the average annual return. The next few months will be volatile like we've never seen before, but don't worry, he says, I'll keep you updated. So, follow my channel and stuff like that. So I find stuff like that interesting. I don't know what's happening, but it seems like there's big moves people have never seen before. There are people who trade silver, talk a lot about silver. And one guy was saying, I can't believe silver lost this amount of money and is still above $100. Like the value is still above $100. They can't suppress the value. And some people think if gold keeps going up, the silver and gold are tied together, their values tied together. And there were economists who were saying in the 80s, it should be closer to $300 to $500 an ounce. Silver should be. And with gold being so expensive, maybe more. And so silver at $100 may not sound like a deal, Mark P, go buy some silver, but it might actually be a deal, right? And so that's interesting. I don't know, but it seems plausible. So who knows? Let's talk about trade because the powers that be are trying to tank the Canadian economy as much as possible. And Jamal Giovanni is saying, USMCA is incredibly important for Canadian workers and businesses. I don't care if it's politically fashionable to say it. Politicians need to stop playing games with Canadian jobs, stop pretending China is a solution. Let's get serious. Let's get a deal done with the United States. And CBC is reporting yesterday, GM layoffs hit Oshawa plant, putting up to 1,200 auto workers out of work Friday. Ford says workers will get job opportunities in other sectors and 24/7 support. 24/7 support? Is that the same as paying the mortgage or like not paying the mortgage? Because the job paid the mortgage. Support, when there's a job market like the one we've got in Ontario right now, when we keep importing foreign people to do jobs, that's a problem. Like that's a problem for people who are getting laid off and have skills in one sector, and that sector is being onshored to China, which seems weird until you look into it, right? The EV car markets are run by the Chinese, and is that going to create 1,200 auto jobs? Doubtful, very doubtful in my opinion. CBC Watcher says how it started. Carney, I have a deal. I've dealt with Trump before, and I'm a good negotiator. How it's going. The head of GM Union Local tells CBC News that up to 1,200 people could end up losing their jobs. And that's just the beginning, folks. I don't mean to be hopeless or anything like that. In fact, I think this is just economic pressure at this point in time. But it does seem like there are things happening, and there are things moving. And if Canada doesn't move, well, that is a move. And it's not a good one. Donald Trump is going after Bombardier, and Trump says, based on the fact that Canada has wrongfully, illegally, and steadfastly refused to certify the Gulfstream 500, 600, 700, and 800 jets, one of the greatest, most technologically sound airplanes ever made, we're hereby decertifying their Bombardier Global Expresses and all aircraft made in Canada, until such time as Gulfstream, a great American company, is fully certified, as it should have been many years ago. Further, Canada is effectively prohibiting the sale of Gulfstream products in Canada through this very same certification process. If for any reason this situation is not immediately corrected, I'm going to charge Canada a 50% tariff on any and all aircraft sold into the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So Trump says, I'm going to destroy all your businesses or do what I say. And they're going to do what he says. And if the government doesn't, then they're going to lose airplane manufacturing jobs down to the United States because those companies are going to move. So checkmate, you're forked, right? Malcolm says, sounds to me like the dust up over Bombardier is another case of Canada's hypocrisy. Why should we decertify American-made Gulfstreams from sale in Canada and expect the U.S. to certify Bombardier sales in the U.S.? It doesn't make any sense. That's crazy talk. Why would we do that? And so, or why would they do that? Makes sense to me. Here is Wealth Moose, and he's responding to the GM layoffs. He says, USMCA isn't politics, it's paychecks. Our jobs run on North American supply chains, not wishful thinking about replacing the United States market with China. Stop the games, protect Canadian workers, and get a real deal done. We should, but our government is trying to cast Trump as the bad guy, and they're trying to prove that his economic strategy doesn't work. They're trying to make it look like Trump doesn't know what he's talking about, and this economic strategy is never going to work, and you can't do that, and the rules-based international order won't stand for this kind of thing. And so we are trying to use our influence and our money to starve the United States of whatever. And I think that it fails. It's this, we can't win a trade war against them. We can't meaningfully impact, I don't think, the United States economy without destroying our economy. I guess we could meaningfully impact the United States economy if we didn't trade anything with them and we totally shut them out. But we'd be screwed if that happened. Can you imagine? The chocolate cereal aisles would be empty. So, but our economy would struggle, jokes aside, if we tried to do that. And it would hurt us much more than it would hurt the Americans, because the Americans can make deals with other people. And we're kind of, not that we're kind of screwed, but we're kind of screwed. And I don't think being polite is the same as a sound trading policy with and deals made with other countries, right? And so Carney's going around and getting commitments to work together in the future, which amount to nothing, really, absolutely nothing. So I'm not confident in our country's ability to weather a storm where we're isolated from the United States in order to isolate the United States or whatever. But if we're isolated from the United States economy, we're going to struggle. Western Standard says the Bank of Canada trims 2026 growth forecast to 1.1%. We are already struggling. Okay, the growth should be more than that. The United States is nearly 5% growth. Restaurants are struggling too. National Post says the president of a fine dining restaurant in Calgary says in the report, some dishes on our menu have been changed or taken off because the key ingredients became too expensive. Canada's restaurants are spending 37% more on food due to a trade war with the United States. And beef, they're phasing beef out, and that's not good. And I can see it already in the grocery store. The beef section's already shrinking. Blacklock's reporter says feds spend $263,000 on consultants for coaching on how to answer questions at parliamentary committees. Not a typo. That's $262,000, $262,609 for strategic and practical advice on committee appearances. By who? Former parliamentarians who are like, oh yeah, this is how you don't answer a question while speaking a lot. Like, this is how you tap dance liberally. Holly Doan says Cineplex Movies, the nation's largest theater chain, is ordered to pay $38,987 plus costs for breach of the Competition Act. The Federal Court of Appeal upheld the penalty over a $1.50 online booking fee. So they weren't allowed to charge the $1.50 online booking fee, and so they got smacked with it. So you might be part of this. You might be able to get some kind of payout for this, but it probably won't be much. But who knows? Cosman, I don't know if I got dinged with that $1.50 fee. Cosman is talking about this. This is fraud in Minnesota, and it's one of its connections to Canada, and it's here because it's money related, fraud, money, that kind of stuff. BC School Board Chair among Canadian politicians funding anti-ICE protests. Juno News has positively identified an elected Canadian official named in Minnesota's anti-ICE protest donation leaks. British Columbia and Burnaby Board of Education Chair Kristen Shinder. And Cosman says one of the Canadian politicians funding anti-ICE protests in the U.S. has been positively identified as Burnaby Board of Education Chair Kristen Shinder after she urged her Instagram followers to send money to Minnesota organizers. So yeah, pretty wild stuff. And you shouldn't. It's incredible to see Canada getting so twisted out of shape about Russia interfering in our elections, and foreign interference in our elections with China, and people are upset about that, but not upset enough. And then in Canada, we don't see a problem hating on Trump, weighing in on U.S. elections. Some people went down to the United States to vote for Biden or vote for Kamala Harris, and to illegally vote. People were flagrantly illegally voting, but those were Americans. I saw Americans doing that too. But it's one of those things where we pride ourselves on, we shouldn't have foreign interference and, blah, blah, blah. But we gleefully interfere in other people's elections all the time. And it's so weird. It's such a weird thing. And we're very not self-aware in that way, like as a society. So I find it strange. And I mean, do we have a lot of influence? I don't necessarily think so. I think China has more influence on our elections than we have on the United States elections. So, but that doesn't mean that the trying is okay. If we're ineffective, it doesn't mean it's okay to try, right? Like, the food professor is talking about money and stuff and the inflation and food inflation. He says, this is a post from a former U.S. ambassador to Canada under the Biden administration. Most Americans are well aware that food affordability in Canada is far from ideal. David says, visual of the week, Canada 2025 food inflation rate, including grocery stores and restaurants, sits at 6.2%, the highest in the G7 and about twice that of the United States. In response, Prime Minister Carney has introduced a new food benefit aimed at easing cost of living pressures for lower income Canadians. While the program may provide short-term relief for some Canadians, it does not address the underlying issue in any way. And there are many questions as to its scale and overall impact. So food inflation in Canada, 6.2%, Japan, 5.1%, UK, 4.5%, USA, 3.1%, Italy, 2.3%, France, 1.7%, Germany, 1.4%. Why is our food inflation so high? It feels like they're trying to make things unaffordable, and they're trying to crash. I think they're trying to crash our economy personally. Here is Leslyn Lewis, and she's talking about we don't need speeches, we need affordable food. And that's been kind of a trope recently. Everybody's saying you can't eat a Carney speech. Like that's not doing anything for our problems, really. All these speeches, all this glad handing, all this nonsense, it's not helping. And I think that's true. Here is Leslyn Lewis.
Spends his time with the world elites, life at home is getting harder for Canadians, including families in Haldeman, Norfolk. The 2026 food price report is alarming. This year, it will cost $17,600 to feed a family of four, which is $1,000 more than it cost last year. The Prime Minister's industrial carbon tax and food standards tax are driving up the food prices. Will he scrap the taxes and bring down the cost of food for Canadians?
Way to go, the Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
The National Institute on Aging's fourth annual...
The Liberals don't answer these questions. She basically says bringing down this one thing is going to bring down the overall costs, and that's going to be helpful. And I don't believe their spin. So I don't want to listen to it. John is talking about Trump and interest rates, and the Fed left the rate at 3.75, and that effectively leaves the rate for 30-year mortgages at 5%, and Trump's not happy about that. And this is just another one of those things where I'm trying to illustrate how they're using assets placed. So when I talk about them moving assets into positions like Mark Rutte into the NATO position, other people into judgeships, other people into Supreme Court judgeships, other people into the Fed chair, those people then use their power to further the agenda of the people who put them there and not necessarily representing the American people. So Trump is going after these assets and trying to free the office from the people who are obstructing him and his plan, Trump's plan. And I think that that's part of the conflict, the moves and the counter moves. Trump wants cheap money and lower costs for housing so people can borrow, get into a house, and be able to afford it. And the powers that be don't want Trump's economic system to work, and so they try and stymie it at every level. They try distraction, Iran, peace in Gaza. They try all sorts of things to take him off his main goal of fixing the economy in the United States and making it so that your everyday guy or person can, get into a house and do basic things. And if money's cheap, then you can take risks on businesses and things like that. You can take risks that you wouldn't be able to take if money was very expensive, right? Money was expensive to borrow and things like that. For example, you can buy $100,000 worth of product and spend $600 a month managing that investment in your product while you run your store and pay rent, and then $600 worth of products sold for a $100,000 loan. That's a pretty okay deal, right? Cheap, right? But if it's very expensive to carry that loan, then you can't do that. That economics no longer makes sense. And so business and housing, this supercharges the economy because more people can get into the pool, but they're trying to screw his economy. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. And so Trump is responding to the no rate reduction, and he says, Jerome Too Late Powell again refused to cut interest rates, even though he has absolutely no reason to keep them so high. He is hurting our country and its national security. We should have everything's national security. This is, if you take one lesson from the Trump administration, call everything national security. Everything has to do with national security, and then get angry when people question it. It's absolutely national security. Get this person out of here. Doesn't know what national security is. How to get your way in politics. It's national security. Okay, we should have substantially lower rate now that this moron admits inflation is no longer a problem or threat. He is costing America hundreds of billions of dollars a year in totally unnecessary and uncalled for interest expense. Because of the vast amounts of money flowing into our country because of tariffs, we should be paying the lowest interest rate of any country in the world. Most of these countries are low interest rate paying cash machines. Thought of as elegant, solid, and prime only because the USA allows them to be. The tariffs being charged to them while bringing in billions to the United States still allows most of them to have a significant trade surplus, though much smaller with our beautiful, formerly abused country. In other words, I've been very nice, kind, and gentle to countries all over the world. With a mere flip of the pen, billions more would come into the U.S., and these countries would have to go back to making money the old-fashioned way, not on the back of America. I hope they all appreciate, although many don't, what our great country has done for them. The Fed should substantially lower rates. Now, tariffs have made America strong and powerful again, far stronger and more powerful than any other nation. Commensurate with this strength, both financial and otherwise, we should be paying lower interest rates than any other country in the world. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Trump. So there you go. Trump says lower the rates right now. And if you don't lower the rates, oh boy howdy, I'm going to write another tweet and it's going to be mean. It's going to be so mean. Ivanhoe says, I'm sure there's other threats that Trump's made as well. Ivanhoe, I've got to say goodbye to the stream. We got to say goodbye to the stream. We've got our grab bag of governance coming up. We've got Alberta separatists and every man and his dog saying Alberta separatists are bad in a funny lineup that is just ridiculous because they're all saying the same thing. So it makes me wonder who paid. China, elections, Trump.